Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Untitled Radio. So today, we're going to be looking at a new Weezing card, which is going to be coming out in Double Blaze in Japan, Unbroken Bonds over here. And frankly, ladies and gentlemen, this Weezing has a ridiculously good ability. So make yourselves comfortable, grab yourselves a nice cold beverage, and let's have a look, shall we? Now, our translation does come from the lovely David Hochmann over at limitlesstcg.com/translations. And to start off with the basics, 120 HP is low. Something like a non-GX Boswell will get an easy one-hit KO, boo, hiss, etc. Retreat cost of 3 is high, but doesn't let you use buff padding, which sucks. And a weakness to Psychic is fine right now. Maybe Garboda becomes big at some point. And I suppose we do have Malamar decks, but it's really not a bad weakness right now. You are, however, hitting weakness on Buzzwole, which is pretty gosh darn nice. So, this ability I keep telling you about then, what does it do? Well, it's called Detention Gas, according to David, and it reads, while this is your active Pokemon, put 1 damage counter on all of your opponent's basic Pokemon between turns. That is ridiculous. Remember how Shrine of Punishment is like crazy good? Because it puts 1 damage counter on each EX and GX between turns. Well, this is basics, including non-EX, non-GX. However, it is just your opponent's. It's not yours. And this is going to add up extremely quickly. It means, let's say for argument's sake, you go first. You go first, your opponent isn't able to evolve, unless they're using something like Duskstone we looked at the other day, which will allow you to do so. And that means that when it comes back to your turn, you can evolve up into Weezing, and your opponent isn't able to do anything but take 10 damage between turns, which is pretty gosh darned awesome. This is really, really nice. This is going to get a whole bunch of damage onto a whole bunch of Pokemon very, very quickly indeed. This is going to make a difference. This is absolutely going to make a difference here. You're going to get some KOs between turns. You're going to get some KOs that you wouldn't be able to get. You're going to be able to bring Pokemon into range that frankly shouldn't be in range. Now, if we go back to the Shrine of Punishment comparison here, there are certain Pokemon that Shrine of Punishment is going to get that you're not. Something like Zoroark GX. Well, that's an evolved GX. Shrine of Punishment will hit, Weezing won't. And there's plenty of others like Gardevoir, etc. But the thing is, all Tag Team GXs are basics. And that's not a coincidence, incidentally. We looked at Snorlax the other day. Snorlax was the first overtly counter Tag Team GX Pokemon we've had since Tag Team GXs came out. Although this one isn't overtly because of that. Come on. It's clearly here for Tag Team GXs. If you want to check out Snorlax, do make sure you pop look at the link in the description. This is going to be really good at helping you bring those Tag Team GXs into range. But it's not just Tag Team GXs. It means that if your opponent wants to evolve, every turn they don't evolve is another 2 damage counters onto their basic Pokemon. Means something like Zorua, which should have 60 HP, comes back to you with 40 HP. Because that's the other thing. It's 10 damage between turns. That's 10 after your turn, 10 after their turn, 10 after your turn, 10 after their turn, and so on and so forth. It's like Shrine of Punishment. It is between turns. That is absolutely huge. Now, this is a stage where I mention it's only while Weezing is active. If you want to turn off Weezing's ability, you've got slacking. So the ability here just isn't going off. Now, this is placing damage counters, so you could use something like a Machop here. Machop stops damage counters, or Machoke I should say, it is evolved a little bit, stops damage counters being placed by abilities onto your Pokemon. Benched Pokemon. So if you're active as a basic, it would still take a damage counter from Weezing here. But Machoke is a very nice counter to this. Machoke will work rather nicely. So you've got some super niche Pokemon like Slacking and Machoke. Generally speaking, no. So what your opponent has to do is get you out the active, and sure, they can play a Guzma, and sure, they could do something like Escape Rope. And this is super dodgy in terms of actually trying to build a deck and make it work. But might I remind you about Rabombi here? Rabombi reads, as long as this Pokemon is on your bench, whenever your opponent plays a supporter card from their hand, prevent all effects of that card done to your fairy Pokemon in play. So if you've got an active Weezing and no other Pokemon on your bench other than fairy Pokemon, that would be a way to turn off Guzma here. Of course, that means you couldn't have a second Weezing on the bench ready to go the next turn, so I'm not sure how viable it is, but it is a funky little combo you can pull off. But unless your opponent can get you out the active, all of their basics are coming down. And yeah, that's Tag Team GXs and that's lovely, but it's also evolving basics. It's also stuff like Zapdos. These non-GXs which are taking over the format. And look, Zapdos starts off with 110 HP. This is going to bring Zapdos into range of most of your Pokemon very quickly. And we do actually have a decent attack here, which we need to, because this only works when you're in the active. So you've got to be attacking with Weezing here. Mostly. We'll get onto that in a second. What it does for just a double colorless energy, I like that it's a single energy attachment. 40 damage, plus 20 to each of your opponent's bench Pokemon, with any damage counters on them. So now, let's say Weezing's active. You put 10 damage on your opponent's Pokemon after your turn, 10 after theirs, 20 with the attack, and then 10 after yours. That's 50. That means that if that Zorua doesn't evolve right now, it's getting KO'd. And not just that Zorua, every Zorua, or every Ralts, etc. Something like a Ditto Prism Star, for instance, and yeah, that can evolve into any stage 1, so it's more likely to evolve. But something like a Ditto Prism Star, 10 after your turn, 10 after theirs, then you attack and knock them out. If there's a Weezing already in play and your opponent benches Ditto, it takes 10 immediately, then you hit for 20, then 10 between turns, and it goes down right away. And they never get a chance to evolve it. If you've got a Weezing in play and they bench a Ditto, if you attack, that Ditto will never evolve. That's the kind of dumb stuff you can be pulling off with Weezing here. As for the main amount of damage, you're doing 40. 40 is fine, I suppose. 140 with weakness and a choice band, you're not doing a huge amount of damage. That's not kind of the point here. The 40 you're doing to the active isn't particularly important, but the 20 you're doing to all damage Pokemon, along with the 10 you do to all basic between turns, 10 after yours, 10 after theirs, etc. That, ladies and gentlemen, is what is really making Weezing stand out here. Without that, it wouldn't be a particularly good Pokemon. But it does have that. And that's the key here. Yeah, against evolved decks, fine. Maybe you need to have some other Pokemon for when everything's evolved and Weezing's not doing very much. But I did say you generally have to be attacking with this. Don't forget we got stuff like Hitmonchan or Deoxys, whereby you hit and then you flick to the bench. So actually, you could use this as a wall in a hit-and-run Pokemon. Hit with something else, maybe hitting for weakness, or making sure that you hit for weakness. And then, switching up Weezing. And then getting it out in the active. And just keep going again and again. We don't have Floatstone in Standard at the moment, so it's much, much more difficult to do. But don't tell me it's not an option. And I need to go back to Shrine of Punishment here, because yes, on the one hand, this is a nice comparison to Shrine of Punishment, but on the other hand, your attack does 20 damage to each Pokemon that has any damage counters on it. Doesn't matter how those damage counters went on. And I'm clearly thinking you play Shrine of Punishment with this. Then all basic GXs take 2 damage counters between turns. But any evolved EX or GX will then take the extra 20 when you're attacking. You can build up a lot of damage here very, very quickly. And then maybe you play something like a Tapu Lele to spread all that damage around your opponent's field as you like. Or maybe you play something like a Honchkrow that does more damage depending on how many damage counters you've got on all of your opponent's Pokemon combined. There are some really fun combos that can be made with this. And yes, it's not going to be great against every single deck ever, especially evolving non-GX decks. That's going to be a slight pain. But pretty much even evolving decks are probably going to have to take at least one damage counter on each of them while they're getting set up, especially if they go second. I think there is a lot to like here. I'm going to be giving this 4 Wassies, which seems very generous. But I can absolutely imagine some decks being played with this where you just absolutely wreck your opponent's setup and get a ridiculous amount of damage on the field super quickly. Especially if you're playing some of these other Pokemon like Tapu Lele. I think this could work. But I would very much like to know if you think this could work. So please do let me know in the comment section. Go nuts. But please do remember the rule, ladies and gentlemen. Be nice, would you? And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at @TheWassie, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all of that, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And please do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WassiePlays for some more Wassie action. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.